Welcome to Flip Lesson 80 for the 6th grade. Today we're going to be using a constant factor to solve ratio problems. And as complicated as that sounds, really we're just working with the principles of equivalent fractions, which, as you think about that idea, that's an idea that isn't as hard to understand. All right, but let's jump right into this and get into what's known as dealing with ratio boxes and how they work. It says to make purple paint, the ratio of blue to red paint is 3:2. So we have that ratio, and you can see how that ratio was put into that box, right? Blue paint, right? Because the 3 comes first in our comparison, right? Blue to the 3, just like red to the 2. We got to remember that order. So we have blue paint to red paint, just like that. But now our problem is asking us that we have 9 ounces of red paint. How much blue paint is needed? And as I'm looking here at my picture, I'm realizing I put my box on. So let's fix that real fast. Right? 9 ounces really should be here, and here's where I want my question mark. All right, because we're looking for blue paint. Okay, and of course that's going to make this problem much, much harder than it really needs to be. So let's make it easier. Let's just pretend that this says 10, just to get us off on an easy start. All right. Okay, so we have 10 ounces of red paint. All right. So since we're dealing with ratios, we're dealing with, like I said, really we're dealing with equivalent fractions. So we have a 3/2 fraction, because that's one way that we can write a ratio. And now we have a question mark over a 10. And so what we need to figure out is how would this 2 become a 10, right? And you're going to multiply by, just as our lesson says, a constant factor, right? And so basically we're multiplying by the number 1. Right? So how does 2 times what equals 10? 5, duh, just said it. And of course we want to multiply by 1, so we're not changing the value, so that's 5/5, which is really the idea of 1. And so in the end, 3 times 5 is going to give us 15. And so while we had 10 ounces to start, right, in the end we're going to need 15 ounces of blue paint to get us going on this way. All right, so we have that idea. All right, a little bit of confusion with my poor placement skills. However, let's try another one just to make sure we get this down. It says the spring flowers have bloomed. The ratio of yellow flowers to red flowers is 5:2. If there are 400 red flowers, how many yellow flowers are there? So as we look at this problem, right, we see our ratio is yellow comes first, so that has to be the 5, compared to our red, which is the second thing listed, so it's 5:2. And you can see that represented in this ratio box, right? Yellow flowers, 5, red flowers, 2. And then we look at our question. If there are 400 red flowers, how many yellow flowers are there? Right? So this time I definitely drew this out the right way. And as we look at this, you see, okay, ratio is 2, but there are actually 400 flowers. So once again, we're going to set this up so that we're looking at this like an equivalent problem. Right? And we can set this up to be like that. And we're going to solve, right? We want to know this times what gives us 400. Now this one hopefully is going to stand out and you're going to say real quickly 200. But what if it didn't? What if you're not sure how to find this number right here? Well, what you can do is you can take your denominator or numerator, whichever one you're working with, and say, okay, I want to solve for this, but I need to figure out how it is transformed into that. And so what you would end up doing if you weren't quite sure, if that number didn't stand out, is you would take your larger number, right, and you're going to divide it by the ratio, right? And you could very easily see that 2 goes into 4. And it looks like my video ended. Wasn't paying attention to time. And of course now you can't see anything. Alright, so 2 goes into 4. And 2 times, right? 2 times 2 gives us 4. Gives us a 0. And now, we're going to bring down our zeros. 2 is going to go into 0. 0 times 2 is going to go into 0. 0 times. And so we see where that 200 actually came from if that mental calculation wasn't right there for you. But now we have this idea, right? We're going to use the number 200 over 200 to help us solve this idea. So 5 times 200, of course, gives us the answer of 1,000. And so in the end, we're going to have 1,000 up here, and that's going to be yellow flowers. So there were 400 red flowers, and there's going to be 1,000 yellow flowers. Yeah, that's it. That's the principles that we're looking at here. So here's your sample problem to get you on your way, looking at the ratios and the actual, and looking for that missing idea by using a constant factor. Really, and then you're looking at equivalent fractions, right, or the principles of equivalent fractions. That is lesson 80.